Chapter 571. Nongju from the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest is here to pay a visit. Nongju stood in front of the door and introduced herself. She didn't care if the people inside agreed or not. She pushed the door open and went in. As soon as she went in, Guan Zhongkai and Yulan both bowed and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Nongju." Nongju waved her hand and her eyes fell on the back of the figure at the window. This figure was so familiar. And that arrogant posture, she had seen it more than once or twice. It was exactly the same as someone. Nongju's face gradually darkened and she said in a low voice, "Get out of here, both of you." Guan Zhongkai and Yulan looked at each other. They knew she was talking about them. The strange thing was that Nongju was polite just now. Why did she turn hostile in the blink of an eye? But from what she said, Nongju seemed to know Niu Yud. They didn't go out immediately. Instead, they looked at Niu Yud. To them, Niu Yud was much scarier than Nongju. Yu Qianqiu looked out of the window and couldn't help smiling bitterly. Was there a need to say it? Nongju obviously recognized him at a glance. It was not easy to hide one's identity in front of familiar people. "You go out first. I have something to say to Mr. Nongju," Yu Qianqiu said calmly. "Yes." Guan Zhongkai and Yulan retreated respectfully, closing the door behind them. Nongju's face twitched. What was going on? Yin Baikong's disciple and Shengguan Taiping's disciple were so obedient to Yu Qianqiu. Nongju was speechless when she thought of the three enemies fighting in Daong Kingdom. This guy really knew how to torment people. After setting up a sound barrier in the room, Nongju sat in front of the table and said coldly, "I was wondering where Niu Yud came from." "So it's you. Should I call you Niu Yud or Yu Qianqiu?" In fact, he had long suspected that Niu Yud was Yu Qianqiu. It was just that the rumor that Niu Yud was a soul formation expert made him unconvinced. This time, in addition to the commotion that Niu Yud had caused in the gold casting city branch, the eerie aura that threatened Sikongju made Nongju even more suspicious that he was Yu Qianqiu. Others might not know, but he had experienced it before. He was one of the few people who knew about Yu Qianqiu's netherworld ghost flame. Now that he saw Niu Yud in person, he had even less doubts. Who else could it be but that kid? But then again, if Niu Yud's deeds were not so similar to the Yu Qianqiu that Nongju knew, even if she saw Niu Yud, she would not be able to insist that he was Yu Qianqiu. After all, there were many people with similar figures in this world. Who dared to say that people with similar figures must be the same person? It was unreasonable. Yu Qianqiu looked around outside the window and closed it. He turned around and bowed, "Senior Nongju, long time no see, I missed you so much." As he spoke, he fiddled with the dishes on the table and filled the empty cup in front of Nongju with wine. "Come on, you missed me." Nongju sneered, "I'm afraid you can't wait for me to scram as far away as possible." Yu Qianqiu chuckled, not minding it. The two of them bickering would not hurt their relationship. He had to be thick-skinned to deal with this old fox, or else he would be the one to suffer. After downing a cup of wine, he sat opposite Nongju and asked, "Is Fu Rong still on Shantian Island? How is she now? Is she not used to it?" When he mentioned Fu Rong, Nongju thought of Ze and felt flustered. She replied indifferently, "Your master treats her much better than you. He personally gave her a middle-grade spiritual treasure and has approved her to live on Shantian Island. With the protection of the world's #1 master, who can live a better life than her?" Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. Why did he hear a hint of jealousy in Nongju's words? He did not care about Nongju's feelings. He patted his chest carefully and breathed a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. I was worried that my master would be unhappy and would not allow Fu Rong to live on Shantian Island." As he spoke, he stood up again and walked to Nongju, making a deep bow. He said with unprecedented sincerity to Nongzhu, Senior, thank you for taking care of Fu Rong for me. I, Yu Qianzhou, will remember this favor and will definitely repay it in the future. Nongzhu was stunned. She had never seen this guy so sincere to her. Just because of that silly girl. What's so good about that silly girl? How can she be better than my Ze? He swallowed his saliva with difficulty and asked disapprovingly, look at how serious you are. Is hibiscus really that good? Why can't I see it? Tell me, what's so good about that silly girl? There was no need to mention how depressed he was in his heart. No matter if it was in terms of appearance or anything else, his daughter Ze was clearly superior to Furong. But it was strange that this guy, who was obviously not a good person, was so concerned about that girl and took care of her. What made him even more puzzled was that even Bai Changchun had taken a liking to that silly girl. Yu Qianzhou shook his head contentedly, there's nothing good or bad about it. Like you said, she's just a silly girl. She's so silly that no matter what I do, she's willing to follow me. This is enough for me to cherish her. There's no other reason. Nongzhu was speechless, but she looked at Yu Qianzhou thoughtfully. Hey! Did you say that my master gave Fu Rong a middle-grade spiritual treasure? Yu Qianzhou finally realized that he had forgotten this because he was thinking about Fu Rong. He remembered that when he asked his master for it, his master said that he didn't have it. Based on his master's character, he wouldn't lie to him. Alas! Can you believe it? Mist Forest. Nongzhu suddenly became energetic and said excitedly, yes. I heard that you were able to break into the Mist Forest. Your master even asked me to ask you what's going on. Tell me quickly, what's the matter with the treasure left by the Demon of Swords? He casually pulled a chair and sat down. My master asked you to ask this. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head awkwardly. He knew that no matter how ridiculous Nongzhu was, she would never use his master, Bai Changchun, to talk nonsense. It was most likely that his master really asked him to ask. Generally speaking, although Nongzhu was not a good person, she was still trustworthy when it came to serious matters. But the key point was that he made up the name of the Demon of Swords. An honest person like him could not possibly admit that he was lying. After thinking for a while, he felt that it was not a big deal. He only said that because he was forced to fight back. He did not do anything wrong. Hence, from the moment he was hunted down to the moment he charged into the misty forest, he recounted everything he had seen and heard. However, he still concealed the fact that he had the golden bead to detoxify the poison. It was the only thing that could save his life. As a person drifting in the world, he had to leave a way to protect himself. Yu Qianzhou described the process of being chased as extremely miserable. It was simply a path of blood and tears. It was as pitiful as one could imagine. In the end, he was forced into a dead end and risked his life to break into the horrifying mist forest. Nongzhu was sometimes moved and sometimes her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Just imagine, if he was not forced into a dead end, who would dare to take the risk of breaking into the mist forest? Nongzhu snorted coldly and said, for the sake of 2 imaginary treasured sabers, the countries actually did such a thing. They are really obsessed. She pointed at Yu Qianzhou and scolded, you're a pig. You've already been forced into such a situation, why don't you use your master? Isn't Old Man Bai's name used to scare people? Let's see who dares to touch you. Chapter 572. Motherf ****. You make it sound good. You know I'm Bai Changchun's disciple. When have I ever scared you? Yu Qianzhou cursed silently. But he said proudly, they're just a bunch of scums. There's no need to bring up my master. Nongzhu couldn't help looking at his arrogance. She thought to herself, like master, like disciple. Although this kid's character is not good, he is similar to Bai Changchun in some ways. No wonder Old Bai accepted him as his disciple. When she heard Yu Qianqiu say that he killed more than 2,000 cultivators without even blinking, Nongzhu was even more shocked. Nongzhu secretly clicked her tongue. Old Bai was indeed cruel and merciless. Nongzhu was dumbfounded and shook her head in disbelief. The legendary immortal ascension stage is in the mist forest. Unbelievable. So the colorful fog is called the soul-transforming smoke. Even an immortal can't resist it. It's really vicious. By the way, why aren't you afraid of the soul-transforming smoke? Who knows? If you ask me, who should I ask? Yu Qianqiu picked up his chopsticks and ate happily. With food in his mouth, he stammered, I guess it has something to do with the skill I'm practicing. My master said that the skill I'm practicing is the most sacred skill between heaven and earth. It's just the soul-transforming smoke. The most sacred skill between heaven and earth. Nongzhu's face was full of envy. She carried the sword on her shoulder and said patiently, Yu Qianqiu, what's the name of your skill? Can you show me your incantation? You can ask my master. I can't make the decision. Yu Qianqiu smoothly mentioned by Changchun. Nongzhu was speechless. However, her eyes were fixed on the fine steel bracelet on Yu Qianqiu's left wrist. Yu Qianqiu threw the sword into his storage bag. His body flashed. Before he knew what was going on, he found that the bracelet on his wrist was gone. He immediately roared, Nongzhu, what are you doing? Give it back to me. Nongzhu turned a deaf ear to him. She took the bracelet and injected her divine sense into it to check it. Then she clicked her tongue and said, You are so lucky. There are treasures everywhere. Oh my God. A storage bracelet used by an immortal. This was probably the only one in the world. Good stuff, good stuff. By the way, what about the things inside? Where did you hide it? Take it out for me to see. Yu Qianqiu smashed the chopsticks in his hand on the table and snorted, Show you? If you snatch it away, who am I going to ask for it? What are you talking about? Am I that kind of person? Take it out and let me have a look. I've seen a lot of things in my life. I'm just short of immortals. Nongzhu winked at him. However, his eyes were darting around Yu Qianqiu's body, as if he was looking for a place to hide something. Recalling the scene of Yu Qianqiu taking out the sword from the storage bag, he dashed over without hesitation and grabbed the storage bag. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded when he heard that. He then clapped and said, My God. Senior Nongzhu, you're really daring. But don't think too much. Let me tell you this. Yu Qianqiu stood up and said happily, Ze. She's really good looking. Since she's going to get married, I'll admit it honestly. I did have some thoughts about her at the beginning. But don't get me wrong. It's not love. It's purely because she's beautiful. Well, we're both men, you know, so I'm a little tempted. Seeing that Nongzhu was a little crazy, he quickly waved his hands and said, Don't get me wrong. Let me finish. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed, Let me tell you this. I had some thoughts about her at the beginning, but I immediately extinguished it. To be honest, I'm not afraid to let you know that I have 3 or 4 women, not just Farong. Because I know that even if I have feelings for Ze, you will definitely not agree to a man who has several women like me and Ze. In addition, because of your relationship with my master, I can't afford to offend you. Naturally, I gave up the idea early. So, you can rest assured that no matter who Ze marries, based on our relationship, I will only sincerely bless her and will never do anything to hurt your son-in-law. That's a bit unreliable. Anyway, I'm a dignified man. My character is not as bad as you think. Bang! No one knew when Nongzhu's hand had touched the teacup on the table, but it was suddenly crushed by him. Yu Qianqiu was startled and couldn't help asking, What's wrong with you? Nongju's face turned black. She couldn't help trembling and said, "What did you say? You said that you have 3 or 4 women other than Furong. Is what you said true?" Chapter 573. Yu Qianqiu revealed an expression of, "You don't understand me," and solemnly replied, "Don't look down on me just because I do things in a flashy manner. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm actually a very low-key person. Women belong to me. I am sincere to each of them. I don't need to show them off just to prove that I am a man. I only told you this because you asked me. Otherwise, I would have kept my mouth shut." ****, you're speaking in such a dignified way. Nongju said word by word with hatred, "You're shameless. You mean me?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at his own nose, a look of confusion on his face. He didn't know what kind of medicine this fellow had eaten to fall out with him just like that. He retorted angrily, "No matter how shameless I am, I didn't do that kind of thing." He was not like some people who thought that they looked impressive and went around swindling people, fooling around with each person they played with. If you ask him to count how many women he has played with in his life, I'm afraid he can't even count himself. How could he be qualified to criticize others? What the hell? I've never seen such a shameless person before. Bah! Bang, bang. Nongju turned the table upside down. The tableware such as bowls, chopsticks and plates fell on the ground. She pointed at him and shouted, "Who are you talking about?" When Yu Qianqiu turned hostile, he was also someone who wouldn't be swayed by force or persuasion. He immediately sneered and said, "I'm talking about whoever did that kind of thing. Poor thing." In the moon sept, Qianghua lonely shadow faced Leng Hanyue. Missing you but not seeing you. Women met but didn't know each other. Heartbroken, year after year. It's so miserable. I don't know who did it. I dare you to say it again. Nongju shouted angrily. It seemed that she was about to hit him. Hee hee. Mr. Nongju, you are famous in the world. You are very powerful. I can't afford to offend you, but I can hide from you. I won't say it. Yu Qianqiu put on an expression of trying to keep the peace. He glanced at the mess on the ground, shook his head and sighed, hoeing the fields at noon, sweat dripping into the soil. Who would have thought that every single grain of food on the plate was so hard? Damn it, your father really knows how to talk. It's just a pity that this land is full of food. Nongju let out a muffled groan. She held her chest and staggered a step back. She bumped into the chair behind her and sat down. His face was pale as he panted heavily. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Yu Qianqiu without blinking. Today, he finally witnessed what it meant to be sharp-tongued. His head buzzed, and he felt the blood in his chest rising. He almost spat something out because he couldn't hold it in. His lips were tightly shut, and he couldn't speak even if he wanted to. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He secretly smacked his tongue and reflected on himself. Oh my God. Some things are destined, and you can't avoid it even if you want to. It turned out that Nongju really fell in love with Chunghua Fairy at first sight. He didn't just play with her like other women, but really wanted to be with her forever. Therefore, he planted the crystallization of their love in Chunghua Fairy's body. Otherwise, with his cultivation, how could Chunghua Fairy get pregnant so easily? In fact, from the beginning, Nongju knew that Chunghua Fairy was a cultivator and thought she was an individual cultivator. However, with the latter's cultivation, she couldn't tell that Nongju was also a cultivator. Since Chunghua Fairy didn't mention her identity as a cultivator, Nongju didn't tell her either. At that time, Nongju was blinded by blind love. He only hoped that they could be equal and didn't want to compete with each other. Therefore, he didn't tell her that he was a master in the Huashan realm. He didn't want to scare Chunghua Fairy more or less. After going through the long life of mortals, he was used to seeing too much deception and was somewhat tired of it. He just wanted the love between them to be purer and less distracting. He thought that maybe Chunghua Fairy also thought the same, so she didn't tell him that she was a cultivator. He thought that with their relationship, it would be a great surprise when they told each other the truth. Because the love between the two of them would not be limited by their lifespans and be too short. Just think about it, how could they not be pleasantly surprised? Nongzhu had already thought about it. Once they knew each other's cultivator identity, he would take Chunghua Fairy back to the South Sea purple bamboo forest and live a carefree life. After Zi was born, Nongzhu was overjoyed. But at this time, Chunghua Fairy suddenly told Nongzhu that she was a cultivator. She was a disciple of the Moon Clan. Nongzhu didn't care about her identity. With her cultivation, she could take away a disciple from the Moon Clan and no one would dare to stop her. But what Chunghua Fairy wanted to say was that apart from being a disciple of the Moon Clan, she was also the successor of the next leader of the Moon Clan. Chapter 574. What surprised Nongzhu even more was that the Moon Clan had a secret that they didn't tell outsiders. All disciples of the Moon Clan could have children outside, but if their daughters were talented enough to cultivate, they had to bring them back to the Moon Clan and cultivate under the Moon Clan. If it was a son, the Moon Clan wouldn't accept him. It was better to let the man carry on the family line. Because the Moon Clan never accepted male disciples. Chunghua Fairy felt guilty and told Nongzhu that she was going to bring her daughter back to the Moon Clan to cultivate. She asked Nongzhu to find another wife. As for her, she was going to continue the Moon Clan sooner or later. She couldn't spend the rest of her life with an ordinary person like him. One could imagine how angry Nongzhu was at that time. He had lived a carefree life among the flowers for half of his life, and it was not easy for him to settle down and give his heart to her. He did not expect this to be the result. She felt like she was cheated. Plus, with her cultivation and status in the cultivation world, how could she allow her daughter to cultivate in a small Moon Clan? That was the biggest joke in the world. With her cultivation of the soul formation state, she couldn't teach her daughter better than a small Moon Clan. Plus, Nongzhu couldn't let her daughter follow in the footsteps of her mother. Nongzhu didn't care about the leader of the Moon Clan. Nongzhu wanted to kill her way to the Moon Clan and raze the entire Moon Clan to the ground. But thinking about it, she felt that it would be too easy for Chunghua Fairy. She lied to her so badly. If a man who didn't fall in love easily found out that he was cheated after falling in love, the consequences would be terrible. Plus, he was a very powerful and capable man. Nongzhu was determined to let Chunghua Fairy taste the feeling of being cheated. She would regret it for the rest of her life. Chunghua Fairy knew that Nongzhu wouldn't be happy if she did that. However, her daughter was in her hands and Nongzhu couldn't take her away. She kept persuading Nongzhu, saying that it was for her daughter's good and that she didn't want her daughter to be like him, an ordinary person for the rest of her life. Nongzhu only sneered at that time. But she didn't expect that Nongzhu was a legendary cultivator of the soul formation state. It would be easy for her to take her daughter away from her. Therefore, on a sunset, the viburnum flower fairy had just gone out to grab something and turned around. When he came in again, he found that his daughter, who had just been placed on the bed, was gone. She immediately guessed that it was bamboo, so she looked around. However, it was impossible for her to find Nongzhu with her cultivation. Since then, the jade flower fairy had never seen the man called Xiaoyao again. Her infant daughter also disappeared with him. She wanted him to stay by Ziyi's side and live an honest life. If he dares to marry me in the future, as long as I know it, I promise I'll make Ziyi unique. If he keeps doing it, I don't mind making him a eunuch. Ah! The corner of Nongzhu's mouth twitched. She smacked her lips and said, I believe you. You're the best at doing this kind of thing. It won't be a problem for you. Her words made Yu Qianqiu a little unhappy. What did she mean by, "I'm the best at doing this kind of thing"? He curled his lips and said, "Senior Nongzhu, I never do this kind of thing. Only when you say it, I'll do my best. This is called keeping promises and valuing credibility. Forget it. It's fine as long as you have the heart." Nongzhu waved her hand and asked, "If I want to marry my daughter to him, should he give me a betrothal gift first? How much do you think I should accept to marry my daughter to him?" "Yes, yes." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "You're kidding. Mr. Nongzhu is famous in the cultivation world. Your daughter is even more precious than him. How can the betrothal gift not be enough? By the way, is your future son-in-law rich?" Nongzhu thought for a while and said slowly, "Rich. There are many treasures. Any one of them is a rare treasure. But that guy is a miser. I'm afraid it's a little difficult for him to take out a big gift. Any one of them is a rare treasure." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He couldn't stop clicking his tongue in his heart. "I knew it. The son-in-law that Nongzhu likes must be from a powerful family. I don't know who he is. If I want to build a relationship with him in the future, even if he's a miser, I'll pluck some of his feathers." F***ck. Yu Qianqiu said indignantly, "The richer a man is, the more stingy he is. He doesn't even want to give a big gift to his wife. It's reasonable for a poor man like me. Why won't he give a big gift even if he has money? How can you swallow this? Tell me who the bastard is. I'll avenge you sooner or later." He had already begun to plan in his heart. After torturing the World Chamber of Commerce, his next stop would be Nongzhu's rich son-in-law. "Speaking of him, I'm full of anger. I don't want to talk about him. By the way, what about you?" Nongzhu asked. What about me?" Yu Qianqiu didn't know why he asked this. Nongzhu said with a fake smile, "I'm marrying my daughter. Aren't you going to give her a gift?" F***ck. You don't have the ability to get your son-in-law's betrothal gift. Why do you want me to give a gift? Is there anyone who asks for a gift from a guest before they even get married? I'm so easy to bully." Yu Qianqiu curled his lips and said with a smile, "That one came in a hurry. He didn't bring anything good with him. How about this? On the day of Ziyi's marriage, I'll definitely bring a gift to congratulate her." "No, you have to receive the gift before you get married," Nongzhu said seriously. "Receive a gift in advance." Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said suspiciously, "How come I didn't know there was such a rule in the cultivation world? This is the rule of my southern sea purple bamboo forest." Nongzhu's face stiffened. Then, he thought of a suitable reason and explained, "Furthermore, you're very busy. When the time comes, you won't even know where I'm going to inform you. While I'm here, it's good to receive the gift in advance. Don't tell me that you're so stingy that you won't even give a gift when Ziyi gets married." Hee hee. What are you saying? Am I that stingy? I'm just thinking about what I should give her," Yu Qianqiu said perfunctorily. However, after thinking about the close relationship between him and Ziyi, it would be a little inappropriate to give an ordinary gift. Subconsciously, he touched the storage bag on his waist and found that it was gone. Only then did he remember that it was taken away by Nongzhu and was lying on the ground. Nongzhu had already checked it. If he took something out from it, it would be a little inappropriate. So, he smiled at Nongzhu and put one hand into the clothes on his chest. He pulled out another storage bag from under his armpit. Nongzhu's eyes twitched. She thought to herself, "There's another storage bag on her body." Yu Qianqiu reached into his storage pouch and pulled out a sword with simple and unadorned patterns. He held it in his hand and examined it. But then, his regretful expression turned resolute. He said straightforwardly, This sword is the same style as the one I gave to my master. They're both treasures of that immortal. Since CE is getting married, I have nothing to say. I'll congratulate her with a generous gift. Senior Nongju, you won't say that I'm stingy, will you? As he said this, he held the sword with both hands and handed it over. I sincerely wish CE a happy life. Nongju's eyes lit up. She took it and touched it. As expected, it was not inferior to the one she gave to Bai Chongchun. She couldn't help but praise, good sword. Then, she nodded with satisfaction and said, you still have a conscience. Chapter 575. Hee. The gift is too small. As long as you are satisfied. Yu Qianqiu laughed happily. He didn't realize that he had sold himself. Nongju sheathed her sword and inexplicably felt relieved. It was as if the courage that had been on her shoulders had finally been removed. She looked at Yu Qianqiu again and thought of the day when Zi bullied him on Shantian Island. She suddenly felt refreshed. Can't catch you. Someone can. You will suffer in the future. Yu Qianqiu suddenly found a strange smile on Nongju's lips. His heart skipped a beat and he immediately became alert. Is she using Ziyi's marriage as an excuse to cheat me of my treasure? That's too shameless. So he asked suspiciously, what are you laughing at? Are you using Ziyi to cheat me of my treasure? Cheat your head. Will I cheat you with Ziyi's life? Nongju scolded. She felt angry and funny looking at this guy. No matter how cunning he would still have a blind spot when thinking about problems. This guy's EQ was extremely low. As for his low EQ, Yu Qianqiu had actually discovered it himself. Since his previous life, he had been living in deception and killing. He didn't have the mood to play romantic and delicate love. Saving his life was the first priority. Although he had met many women and it was common for him to play around with them, he could tell whether a woman was good or bad at a glance. However, he had no experience in serious love. Later, he made a name for himself and had a position in Jianghu. In addition, the women he met at that time were quite realistic. Therefore, for him, no matter how beautiful a woman was, she was still an animal on the bed. Talking about love with them. He was either talking nonsense or courting death. Because he had no experience in this aspect, and this life was the fate of his previous life, he was still fighting and killing. Therefore, the women he found in this life were as simple and kind as possible. Because he felt that it was too tiring to play mind games with his woman, and he didn't have the energy to deal with it. He had chosen Furong, Wu Lixue, Chu Ping'er, and Bai Suzhen, who had been silently sacrificing herself for him. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. He had thought it through. Among the three women who had a romantic relationship, only Chu Ping'er had a complicated life experience. However, it was a dream that led him to join the cultivation world, and he instinctively wanted to protect this dream. As for Furong and Wu Lixue, they were two simple and pure women. So what if he said they were stupid? In short, he liked them very much. Wasn't Bai Suzhen the same? She was a woman who only knew how to treat him well. It was also because of these women who did not hold him back that he could do whatever he wanted in the cultivation world without any worries. That's more like it. Nongju suddenly sighed. Remember to treat Zi well in the future. I don't need you to remind me. Based on our relationship, I will definitely treat her well. Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and promised, don't worry. Ziyi's business is my business. Tell her, no matter who she marries, if she encounters any trouble in the future, just let me know. I don't dare to promise anything else, but murder and arson. No, I mean I won't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. Idiot. Nongju scolded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She pointed at him and said, I heard that you Qianqiu, are very talented. I really wonder if you plagiarized those things from somewhere. They don't match up at all. Yu Qianqiu didn't care. They were plagiarized things anyway. Nongzhu asked again, tell me honestly. You became Niu Yud and created that restriction-breaking pill. What are you trying to do? Hey! You know I have a lot of women and expenses. If I don't make some money, how can I support my family? Yu Qianqiu shook his head helplessly. Nongzhu's mouth twitched. Listening to him, it seemed that her daughter would not be short of money in the future. This was a good thing. She paused and said, you have your eyes on the world commerce. Isn't it said that the world commerce is the richest? Yu Qianqiu said weakly. Humph. Be careful. Yin Baikang's money isn't that easy to get. Don't let your women become widows before you can get your money. Nongzhu's words were sarcastic, but there was a rare sense of concern. The difference in treatment between a family and a non-family was huge. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, whether or not he can get the money is another matter. But if he wants to kill me, I'm afraid that Yin Baikang is still lacking. Nongzhu glanced at him. She still had some confidence in his ability to escape. It was definitely not a coincidence that this guy could escape from death time and time again. He must have something to rely on. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he wouldn't dare to touch Yin Baikang. How audacious. Do as you see fit. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Nongzhu was about to turn around when she heard Yu Qianqiu ask, Senior Nongzhu, let me ask you something. Do you know who the one-armed guy in the ghost manor is? Also, I saw a mysterious masked woman in the ghost manor. The one-armed old man was very respectful to her. Nongzhu asked casually, you met both of them in the ghost manor? Yes. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, I feel that the one-armed old man is a spirit-severing master. But he was very respectful to the masked woman. Could it be that she is also a spirit-severing master? Yes, both of them are spirit-severing masters. Moreover, both of them are people with great backgrounds. Speaking of which, they are related to your master. Nongzhu explained, the one-armed old man is called Li Duxing. Like his name, he was a loner in the cultivation world and never had any contact with anyone. That woman should be Lu Yanqing from the Lingfang Valley. The most beautiful woman in the world, Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianqiu showed a trace of regret. It was a pity that he didn't see her face at that time. Then, he was slightly taken aback. He had dragged third brother Axian into the picture. Could it be that he had exposed himself? But he didn't think it was possible. Even if she asked third Axian, how could he know who Niu Yud was? At most, he would think that he was talking nonsense to confuse people. But he didn't know that third Axian had asked his master about the origin of this method after he saw the horror of his absorbing stars technique. Lu Yanqing didn't know either. But when she saw Niu Yud fight in the ghost manor, she guessed that he was Yu Qianqiu. Nongzhu saw that he was tempted by her beauty and snorted, What? Are you interested in Lu Yanqing? No, no. I just want to see what the most beautiful woman in the world looks like. Don't get the wrong idea. Yu Qianqiu waved his hands awkwardly and quickly changed the topic. Lu Yanqing, I know you had a conflict with my master. What's the relationship between Li Duxing and my master? 500 years ago, Li Duxing was also a proud man with extraordinary aptitude. At that time, he had just broken through from the middle stage of spirit severing to the last stage of spirit severing. But he didn't know how proud he was. Instead, he went to challenge your master directly, bypassing the other 9 of the top 10 masters. Don't you know what kind of person your master is? As a result, he was seriously injured by your master on the spot. He was lucky that I happened to be playing in Shuntian Island. So, he begged your master to let him go. Nongzhu shook her head slightly and sighed with emotion. Yu Qianqiu looked at him with a bit of boredom and thought, damn it. My master is a villain, but you are a good guy. You are like Song Jiang in time. No wonder he is so popular in the cultivation world. Everyone owes him a favor. Nongzhu continued, in fact, I have never dealt with Li Duxing. I only heard of his name. We don't know each other. He was very arrogant when he broke into the demon ghost realm and was very rude to me. To be honest, I didn't want to save him at that time. Later, I saw that he was beaten so badly by your master that he almost didn't look like a human and lost one of his arms. Finally, I couldn't bear to see him like that, so I saved him. But when I saved him, I found that he was unconscious. There were more than 80 holes in his body because of your master's finger. He was so miserable. He is completely relying on his profound cultivation to hang on to his last breath. Based on my ability, there is no way I can save him. I had to send him to Lu Yanqing in Lingfang Valley. Yu Qianqiu ignored his sarcasm. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. He squinted slightly, stared at Nongzhu, and said slowly, help me kill him. You want me to kill Yan Juixing? Nongzhu stared at him up and down in surprise for a while, and then said with a smile, no. Don't you claim to be the best master below the Huashan realm? You've killed several masters at the late stage of nature's test. Yan Juixing is just at the early stage of nature's test. It's easy for you to kill him. What's more, I heard that Yan Juixing was defeated by you when he was in the Chinese cultivation world. He should be no match for you. Why do you want me to help you kill him? It should be a kind of intuition. I don't know why, but I always feel that he will be a great disaster if he stays, and we must eradicate him as soon as possible. By the way, I remember something. Yu Qianqiu asked, do you remember that Zi and I once held a sword drawing contest in the Chinese cultivation world? I've heard a little about it. Nongzhu nodded slightly, and carefully observed the expression on Yu Qianqiu's face. She found that his expression was very serious when he talked about Yan Juixing. This made him take it seriously. He thought to himself that this guy was not afraid of anything and even dared to kill masters at the Huashan realm, but he was afraid of a cultivator at the early stage of nature's test. It was really puzzling. You also know that the two swords were condensed by the ghost fire of the netherworld. During the sword drawing contest, one of Manhu's junior brothers was killed by the black fire. But do you know how evil Yan Juixing is? Yu Qianqiu still had some lingering fear when he thought of the scene at that time. Yan Juixing's extremely cold eyes. After a pause, he continued, that guy is not afraid of the black fire, and he even inhaled the evil spirit released by the black fire as oxygen. And that pair of eyes, oh my God, are those still human eyes? Damn, they are so evil. Z also saw it at that time. You can ask her if you don't believe me. There is such a thing. Nongzhu was also shocked. Others did not know the power of the black fire, but she had personally entered the 9th Netherworld cave and the Sea of Netherworld. Even though she was at the middle stage of Huashan realm, she did not dare to stay in front of the Sea of Netherworld for too long. She naturally knew how powerful the black spirit released by the black fire was, especially the black wind blade condensed by the black spirit, which was one of the biggest obstacles to the 9th Netherworld cave. But Yan Juixing was only at the early stage of nature's test. He was not afraid of the ghost fire of the netherworld, and he could even absorb the black spirit. Even Bai Changchun was afraid of it, but he was not afraid of it. It would be strange if Nongzhu was not shocked. Yu Qianqiu snorted fiercely, I don't care how evil he is. It is better to eliminate the root of the problem than to nip it in the bud. With my cultivation, I can't find a chance to do it now, otherwise I would have done it long ago. So, please help me get rid of him as soon as possible. A ruthless and ruthless character was revealed without a doubt. Nongzhu was stunned by his look. She thought, old Bai is cruel and merciless, but this guy is not only cruel and merciless, but also fierce and unscrupulous. Where did he learn all these? I can't help you with this. Nongzhu shook her head slowly and said, Yan Zhuixing is one of the main figures in the war against the Huaxia cultivation world with the support of various countries. I promised them that I would not interfere in the war between them and the Huaxia cultivation world. Once I help you kill Yan Zhuixing, I will break the promise I made. Yu Qianqiu stamped his feet in exasperation and said, Hey! Why are you so pedantic? I didn't ask you to do it openly. You could have killed him secretly. With your cultivation, killing him would be a piece of cake. If you did it secretly, no one would know it was you. Go to hell as far as you can. Nongzhu was a little embarrassed and said, Do you think I am like you? I do things by hook or by crook. I will definitely keep my promise to others. This is my bottom line as a person. Yu Qianqiu was speechless for a while. Then he bowed and tried to persuade her with good intentions, let's not talk about the hatred between me and him. He will seek revenge on me sooner or later. But I really have a very strong feeling that you may not believe it if I say it. When I saw him in the saber drawing contest, I had a very strong premonition that this guy will become a scourge of the Huaxia cultivation world sooner or later. Just think of it as getting rid of the scourge of the Huaxia cultivation world. He had a premonition that Yan Zhuixing would become a scourge of the Huaxia cultivation world, and Yan Zhuixing had a premonition that he would meet him in by one country. I don't know whether these two guys are telling the truth or not. Anyway, it is a little mysterious. Nongzhu snorted and smiled, this guy is fooling me again. He obviously wants to use me to get rid of the dissidents, but he uses a premonition as an excuse. If he wants to fool me, he should find a better reason. I think you will become a scourge of the Huaxia cultivation world sooner or later. No, you are already a scourge of the Huaxia cultivation world. Wherever you go, there will be chaos and no peace. Even if what you said is true, I will not break my bottom line. Nongzhu shook her head unmoved. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help swearing. But he was still not reconciled. He rolled his eyes and said, Wait, since you have a good relationship with Wenlan Feng, there is something I have to remind you. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Nongzhu said impatiently. Did you notice when you passed by just now? Don't you find it strange that Yan Zhuixing is actually hanging out with that hipster girl? Yu Qianqiu reminded him with good intentions. Nongzhu looked at him vigilantly, but after thinking for a while, she also felt something was wrong. Although Hipster was a member of the royal family, she was a mortal and had nothing to do with cultivators. At most, she knew a little martial arts. But Yan Zhuixing, Man Hu, and the other four masters at the end of the nature's test were together with her. Could they be friends? Seeing that he was thinking, Yu Qianqiu did not forget to add fuel to the fire. You may not know Yan Zhuixing, but he and I are enemies. I know him very well. As the saying goes, the person who knows you best is your enemy. We have a deep understanding of each other. Seeing that Nongzhu was listening carefully, he continued, Yan Zhuixing is extremely vicious. When he was still in the 100 Flowers Valley of Huaxia, he controlled a group of people with poison. The most terrifying thing was that he had somehow found the long-lost, primordial soul-stripping technique, and had been secretly controlling the cultivators of the cultivation world for his own use. Later, he used those people to burn, kill, and loot. Unfortunately, I ran into him, and it was because I exposed him that we became enemies. If you don't believe me, you can ask around in the Huaxia cultivation world. Then you will know whether what I said is true or not. Are you saying that he is plotting against the hipster girls? Nongzhu asked casually while thinking. Hipster is nothing. So what if he is a member of the royal family? Even if you give that girl to him, I'm afraid he will be too lazy to take her with him. She is a burden. He even brought 4 masters at the end of the nature's test to go shopping with that girl. What a ghost. Do you believe that he is so kind? Yu Qianqiu sneered, and then said very seriously, I suspect that guy has designs on the Wen family. Otherwise, he will not be interested in a hipster. Since you have a good relationship with Wen Lanfeng, you should let him be on his guard. You don't want me to find Wen Lanfeng and ask him to kill Yan Juixing, do you? Nongzhu suddenly came to her senses. She realized that this guy had already planned to kill Yan Juixing when he mentioned Wen Lanfeng. But he encouraged her to do it. Seeing that she did not agree, he showed his true colors. It was really one trap after another. Chapter 577. At this point, Yu Qianqiu didn't want to hide it anymore. It was meaningless. He said, let's not beat around the bush. Since you don't want to do it, let Wen Lanfeng do it. It's for the good of the Wen family. Impossible. Wen Lanfeng can't kill an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator for no reason. He's not like Yin Baikong. If he were that kind of person, I wouldn't be friends with him. Nongzhu saw that Yu Qianqiu didn't want to give up, so she waved her hand and said, all right. Don't try to persuade me anymore. You figure it out yourself. He's just an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator. It's not worth it for a soul formation cultivator to do it. Don't you know some early-stage tribulation-passing cultivators? You'd better target them. Although I haven't seen Yan Juixing fight, I'm afraid even an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator is no match for him. Yu Qianqiu asked, do you believe me? It doesn't matter if I believe you or not. You figure it out yourself. I'll go back and tell Wen Lanfeng about the hipster. Nongzhu lifted her hand and removed the soundproof barrier. She opened the door and walked out slowly with her hands behind her back. Pedantic. I'll do it myself. Yu Qianqiu muttered and followed behind Nongzhu. When the door opened, everyone's eyes were fixed on the upstairs. They saw 2 people walk out one after another and walk down the stairs. The most eye-catching one was Niu Yud, who walked behind them. He was not an ordinary person. How many people dared to be as arrogant as him in the cultivation world? Even Yan Juixing's gaze towards him was filled with admiration. The hipster was afraid. This person was comparable to Mr. Nongzhu. As for the shopkeepers and workers in the shop, they were trembling with fear. Imagine what kind of person would dare to look down on the princess. Mr. Nongzhu, Senior Niu. A group of people saluted. The 2 of them nodded slightly in acknowledgement, both of them looking like experts. Nongzhu took the opportunity to take a serious look at Yan Juixing, and then glanced at hipster. Without saying anything, she walked out of the store and said to Wen Chongjing, who was bowing at the door, let these people go back. Let's go. Wen Chongjing hurriedly shouted at the leaders of the soldiers outside, and then chased after Nongzhu eagerly. As for the soldiers, they had no choice but to withdraw. Yu Qianqiu glanced at everyone expressionlessly. His eyes paused on Yan Juixing as he let out a sound of surprise. Yan Juixing and Man Hu exchanged glances with each other. They did not know what Niu Yud had seen. Yulan smiled and said, Senior Niu, is there something wrong? What's your name? Yu Qianqiu asked Yan Juixing. With a faint smile, Yan Juixing bowed politely and said, I'm Yan Juixing. What can I do for you, Senior? Yu Qianqiu looked at hipster and the shopkeepers in the shop and said, Yulan do, ask the irrelevant people to leave. Everyone understood the meaning behind his words. Some topics related to cultivators were naturally inconvenient for mortals to know. Yulan Du took the order and immediately asked the shopkeeper and the waiters to leave. The shopkeeper and the waiters did not dare to object, so they all left obediently. Under Yulan Du's instructions, the waiters even carried the 4 unconscious guards out. Only when Hipster was invited, she looked at Yan Zhuixing reluctantly, as if asking for his opinion. Yan Zhuixing smiled and nodded to her. Hipster then pouted and went out. Yulandu was very meticulous. He even released his divine sense to check every corner of the restaurant. After making sure there was no one, he cupped his hands and said, "Senior, it's done." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand to indicate that he understood. He stared at Yan Zhuixing and sized him up. Sometimes he shook his head and sometimes he sighed. The group of people were baffled by the commotion. After a while, Senior Niu asked, "You are Yan Zhuixing, right?" "Yes." Yan Zhuixing looked calm on the surface, but he was pondering in his heart. "Strange. I've seen countless people, but I've never seen someone like you." Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue and asked, "Do you cultivate some kind of strange cultivation method?" "Not bad." Man Hu and the others were shocked. They did not expect Niu Yu to be so powerful. He could actually see that Yan Zhuixing cultivated a special cultivation method. He was indeed an expert who dared to attack the forces of various countries. Even their master, Bing Qingzi, could not be compared to him. He was too powerful. Yan Zhuixing's calm eyes were also moved. The few of them were not inexperienced people, so they quickly concealed it. Guan Zhongkai and Yulandu could see that something was wrong with such an obvious reaction. The two of them exchanged glances. "Senior, you are overpraising me. The cultivation method that Junior cultivates is not special. It is a cultivation method passed down by the 10,000 demons in the Chinese cultivation world." Yan Zhuixing explained. "Passed down my ass. Isn't Qiu Weiyuan a disciple of the 10,000 demons? Isn't he better than you in the sword-drawing competition?" Yu Qianqiu also saw some clues from their brief shock. He knew that he had guessed correctly. He glanced at Guan Zhongkai and Yulandu from the corner of his eyes. He stared at Yan Zhuixing and shook his head. "Brat, you might be able to hide it from others, but you can't hide it from my eyes. Although I don't know what cultivation method you are cultivating, if the 10,000 demons had such a cultivation method, I'm afraid that the entire cultivation world would have already surrendered to the 10,000 demons. The top 10 experts of the cultivation world would all have to step aside." These words were too frightening to hear. Guan Zhongkai and Yulandu stared at Yan Zhuixing with eagle-like eyes. What a joke. This brat actually possessed a peerless cultivation method that even the top 10 experts of the cultivation world would have to step aside. How could that be? Didn't Niu Yu say that this was a cultivation method that could make the entire cultivation world surrender? Man Hu and the others were shocked again. This Niu Yu was too powerful. Everything he said was true. The demonic book was indeed a heaven-defying cultivation method. They felt that they shouldn't have stayed in Lon City this time. They shouldn't have met Niu Yu. This time, they were in big trouble. Once this news spread, the consequences could be imagined. The four of them were tense on the inside but relaxed on the outside. Their eyes were faintly staring at Guan Zhongkai and Yulandu. If this terrifying Niu Yu was not here, the four of them would have killed them on the spot. They would never allow the two of them to spread the secret. "Senior, your joke is too big. If this spreads, I won't be able to bear it," Yan Zhuixing said with a smile on his face. In his heart, he wished that he could kill this person. But for now, he wouldn't dare even if he had 10 guts. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. At least until now, he had never seen such a powerful person like Niu Yu. When he met Wen Lanfeng in the Wen family's sacred land, even Wen Lanfeng couldn't see through it. Yet, he could. His cultivation could be imagined. No wonder he had the guts to mess around in the cultivation world. Without some ability, who would dare? Hee. Don't be nervous. I'm just saying casually. As for whether it's true or not, You and I both know it. There's no need to fight over it. Yu Qianqiu shrugged indifferently and said, whether you make the entire cultivation world submit or not has nothing to do with me. Anyway, I'm alone. I won't fight for fame or profit with anyone. Haha. I'll just watch the show. Senior really likes to joke. Man who stepped forward and cupped his hands. We still have something to do. Farewell, Senior. The few of them bowed to Yu Qianqiu together. They all knew that it was not good to stay here for long. Go ahead. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand with an indifferent look. The few of them quickly left without saying anything. Yu Qianqiu was still smiling. Guan Zhongkai couldn't help but ask with cupped hands. Senior, what you said just now is true. What's true can't be false, and what's false can't be true. We'll naturally know in the future. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. That kid will sooner or later. TSK. Let's not talk about it. Yu Qianqiu suddenly frowned and said strangely, from the looks of these four experts at the end of the crossing calamity stage, it seems that Yan Zhuixing is very important to them. Their words and actions all revolve around him. Chapter 578. But the shopkeeper was in a hurry to flatter Yu Qianqiu and refused to take money. What a joke. He was flattering a person who was more important than the princess. How could he accept money? If he could form a relationship with such a person, it would be more valuable than this ingot of gold. Yu Qianqiu glared at him coldly. The shopkeeper suddenly felt a chill and shivered in fear. He didn't dare to pester him anymore and watched the distinguished guest disappear into the street. Walking to a secluded alley and seeing no one around, Yu Qianqiu flashed into the air. After identifying the direction, he flew to the Lan City branch of the World Chamber of Commerce. The reason why he came to Lan City of Baiwan country was to find a chance to see Wen Lanfeng and see what this guy who supported him meant. He didn't want to be sold out without knowing. He didn't expect to meet Nongzhu in advance. He was relieved to know that Wen Lanfeng didn't have any bad intentions. The problem he had to solve now was Yan Zhuixing. Since he met him, he had to take the opportunity to eliminate this guy to avoid future trouble. If he was Yan Zhuixing, he would definitely kill Guan Zhongkai and Yulan to silence them. After all, the odds of winning against 2 with 4 in the final stage of the tribulation passing stage was very high. Plus there was a strange guy like Yan Zhuixing, so the other party would definitely ambush on the way to the Lan City branch. Yu Qianqiu made up his mind. If Guan Zhongkai and Yulan were in danger, he would definitely think of a way to save them and let them spread the news, just as he expected. In a wilderness on the outskirts of Lan City, Man Hu and the others were discussing how to split into 2 groups to intercept and kill Guan Zhongkai and Yulan. But what made them depressed was that everyone thought that Guan Zhongkai would go to the Lan City branch of the World Chamber of Commerce to report, but what about Yulan? Where was the contact point of the Circe's kingdom? Where could they intercept and kill Yulan? There were only a few of them. They couldn't just scatter and search everywhere, right? As for Wenqing, who had the mind to care about her now? They had already dumped her. Damn it! Why did we miss this? What's the point of just killing Guan Zhongkai? The rest of Yulan can still spread the news. The 7th brother stomped his feet in frustration. 5th brother looked at Man Hu and said, Eldest brother, what do you think we should do? Man Hu snorted coldly and said, The Redbud Kingdom isn't far from the snowy mountains. Now that things had come to this, he had no choice but to contact his master and ask him to personally take action. He asked the old man to immediately rush to the Purple Thistle Kingdom and kill Shengguan Taiping and the others before they spread the news. He believed that with his master's cultivation, killing Shengguan Taiping would not be a problem. In this way, even if they get the news, dead people won't reveal secrets. Lao Wu clapped his hands and agreed, that's right. Let's kill Shangguan Taiping and his men. I'm sure Yulandu won't know about it for a while, so he won't spread the news. We'll definitely be able to find him easily. It's settled then. Fifth brother, sixth brother, go find Yulandu immediately. I'll send a message to Master first, and then I'll go to the Orchid City branch with seventh brother. The world commerce doesn't have any experts here, and Guan Zhongkai isn't my match. The two of us are enough to wipe out the Orchid City branch. Man Hu waved his hand and said, let's split up. Just as Lao Wu and Lao Lu were about to leave, they heard Yan Zhuixing, who had been frowning and pondering, shout, wait. The four martial brothers all paused, and Man Hu asked doubtfully, young palace master, this matter shouldn't be delayed. What else do you have to say? Yan Zhuixing shook his head and sighed. Do you really think that Niu Yu just casually mentioned it and will really stay out of it? That's impossible. If I'm not mistaken, he purposely said those words for Guan Zhongkai and Yulan to hear. If he really wants to stay out of it, it's fine as long as he knows it. Why must he say it out loud? Maybe he really spilled the beans. This kind of thing isn't impossible. Lao Qi casually said. Man Hu raised his hand to signal him to shut up, frowned and said in a deep voice, young palace master is right. Niu Yu's last words are indeed fanning the flames. Young palace master, what do you mean? I have a feeling that Niu Yu is purposely targeting me. Yan Zhuixing's eyes stared coldly in the direction of Lan City, gritted his teeth and said, since he deliberately wants Guan Zhongkai and Yulan to spread the news, how can he let us kill the two of them so easily? If I'm not wrong, he will definitely obstruct us. With his cultivation, which one of us can stop him? Furthermore, if we make a move, it will make it even more obvious that we have ulterior motives, and it will prove that we want to silence them. At that time, we won't even have a chance to redeem ourselves. With all the countries fighting together, how can Senior Bing withstand the joint attack of a few experts? What a vicious plan. What is this Niu Yu trying to do? We have no enmity with him. Lao Wu let out a breath of cold air. Lao Qi weakly asked, do you guys think that Master has some enmity with him? What's the point of saying this now? Man Hu glared at him, then turned back and said, young palace master, do you have an idea? It can't be considered an idea. We can only try it as a last resort. At least there's a chance to recover our losses. Yan Zhuixing quickly analyzed to the others, the only thing we need to do now is to immediately send a message to Senior Bing, so that he can be prepared. We have to return to Snowy Mountain as soon as possible before the news spreads. Otherwise, it won't be safe to stay anywhere. Once we have a foothold, we can accuse Niu Yu of spouting nonsense. After all, Niu Yu is a big liar, and everyone in the cultivation world knows that. In terms of credibility, we are better than him. In the end, it will depend on whose words are more trustworthy. This is our only chance. The others nodded slightly. Man Hu clapped his hands and said, all right, it's decided. You guys bring young palace master and hurry on with the journey. After I send the message to master, I will immediately rush over. There's no time to lose, let's go. In the blink of an eye, the four of them quickly flew into the sky. Man Hu was alone in the wilderness. He took out a handful of spirit stones, found the direction of Snowy Mountain, and used his unique voice transmission secret technique to send a message. Yu Qianqiu flew along the route from Lan City to the World Commerce Association's branch. Along the way, he didn't even see any signs of fighting, let alone hear any sounds of fighting. The Lan City branch was just ahead, so why wasn't there any reaction? Yu Qianqiu floated in the air, pinched his chin, and muttered to himself, strange, could it be that I made a mistake in my judgment? Or could Yan Zhuixing and the others bear the consequences of this news spreading? It can't be that awesome, right? Logically speaking, the World Commerce Association is the most powerful and has the widest channels to spread the news. The first person they would kill should be Guan Zhongkai. Just as he was about to go to the Lon City branch to see if Guan Zhongkai was there, he heard someone shouting, "Senior Niu, why are you here?" Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and saw Guan Zhongkai and Yulan coming together, followed by more than 10 people. The group of people gathered in the air and bowed to him. "Senior Niu. No need to stand on ceremony." Yu Qianqiu raised his hand, suppressing the doubts in his heart, and asked Guan Zhongkai, "You've already sent the news back to the World Commerce Association's headquarters?" Guan Zhongkai rubbed his palms excitedly and said, "That's right, my master personally received the news. At the same time, my master also told this junior to thank senior, saying that if it wasn't for senior, we wouldn't have discovered such a major hidden danger." He was so excited because Sikongju praised him for doing well this time, saying that he would personally tell Grandmaster Yin Baikong. As for his previous mistakes, he wouldn't pursue it anymore, and his authority in the World Commerce Association was restored. What a joke, this authority wasn't simple. In terms of seniority, he was the number 4 person in the World Commerce Association. He was second only to his martial uncle Jing Yuankong. How could he not be happy? As a matter of fact, as soon as he regained his authority to mobilize manpower, he immediately mobilized the 15 experts of the branch here. Half of it was for Yulan to see, to tell him that he hadn't lost power in the World Commerce Association. The other half was to ensure Yulan's safety when he went to deliver the news. After all, he was also worried that Man Hu and the others would silence them. If an accident happened, with these people blocking, it would be enough for the 2 of them to escape. Haha. Don't thank me, this matter has nothing to do with me. You guys go do what you need to do. Yu Qianqiu politely and humbly brushed these people off. Watching the group of people disappear into the distance, he still had a stomach full of doubts and felt that something was wrong. After that, he arrived at the Lon City branch. The manager here also recognized him and immediately received him warmly. Yu Qianqiu let the manager do what he needed to and didn't need to care about him. Sitting in the inner hall and waiting for Guan Zhongkai to return, he frowned and thought about what went wrong. It shouldn't be like this. World Commerce Association Headquarters, Cornucopia God of Wealth Peak. After Sikongju received the news from his disciple, he immediately went to the Hall of Wealth at the top of the God of Wealth Peak and quickly informed the seated Yin Baikong of the news. What? There's such a thing. Yin Baikong opened his eyes and stood up. He stared at his eldest disciple and shouted, "Are you sure that this news is true? It shouldn't be false." Zhongkai saw it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears. Sikongju explained, according to Zhongkai, Niu Yid seems to know Nongzhu. After sending Nongzhu out of the restaurant, he accidentally saw Yan Zhuixing and asked him a few questions on the spot. Although Niu Yid didn't take it seriously after asking, Zhongkai saw that Yan Zhuixing and the others became nervous and quickly left. Zhongkai felt that this was a serious matter and immediately returned to the Lon City branch to report this matter to me. Yin Baikong squinted his eyes and said, "You mean that Bing Qingzi's disciples know this secret?" This is only Zhongkai's judgment based on the situation on the spot. This is because he noticed that when Niu Yid mentioned this matter, the expressions of Bing Qingzi's 4 disciples were obviously not right. Furthermore, it was Man Hu, the eldest disciple of Bing Qingzi, who first found an excuse to bring Yan Zhuixing away. Sikongju was speaking the truth. However, he didn't know that Guan Zhongkai had exaggerated the matter a lot in order to atone for his crimes. He even showed off his wisdom and martial prowess. Humph. Bing Qingzi, what the hell are you trying to do? Yin Baikong's expression turned sinister as he said in a deep voice, when everyone decided to replace the Yan father and son, Bing Qingzi even came to persuade me and Hu Changshu to protect them. At that time, I felt that it was strange. They were just 2 insignificant people and I couldn't figure it out. However, there were constantly people who disregarded their lives and forcefully obstructed them, as if they had received a death order. The 5 of them had already fought dozens of battles, killing at least 200 to 300 if not 400 to 500 enemies. Fortunately, with the cultivation of the 5 of them, they were able to grit their teeth and endure it, and nothing happened to them. Now that things had come to this, it was clear that the entire World Commerce Association had been mobilized. Once their whereabouts were exposed, there were more and more people intercepting them. The opponents' cultivation was also getting higher and higher. Among the people they encountered, the number of experts at the late tribulation passing stage was gradually increasing. This was not a good sign. In a dense forest, the 5 people were hiding. From their appearance, they seemed to be in a somewhat sorry state. Number 5, number 6 and number 7 stood in a triangle, vigilantly watching their surroundings. Yan Zhuixing, who was surrounded by the 3 of them, was sitting cross-legged. If one looked closely, they would discover that he was not actually sitting on the ground. He was still a few inches off the ground, floating up and down slightly with his eyes closed. 7 poisonous snake-like black fiendish auras were swimming around his body. Within each black fiendish aura, there was a faintly discernible blood light flashing, appearing exceptionally strange. At the side, man whose expression was solemn as he carefully guarded Yan Zhuixing, like a personal bodyguard. In the past few days of battle, they had continuously killed several late tribulation passing stage experts. To others, it was not a big deal if they could kill him. But to Yan Zhuixing, who cultivated demonic arts, a late tribulation passing stage nascent soul was an excellent tonic. None of the nascent souls he had devoured before had such a high cultivation. Including the 6 late tribulation passing stage experts, Yan Zhuixing had already devoured the nascent souls of more than 10 tribulation passing stage experts in 2 days. Man Hu and the others were the first to see this bloody scene of devouring. They were somewhat shocked, but they were already numb to it and did not find it strange. But what was worse was that eating too much tonic was not a good thing. If it was any other time, they would naturally be eager. But at this critical moment when they were escaping, Yan Zhuixing suddenly discovered that it was time for his demonic eyes to make a breakthrough. The opening chapter of the demonic book said, "Follow one's nature and become a demon." Once the opportunity arrives, one will immediately become a demon. The general meaning was that cultivating the demonic book was about following one's nature. If there was an opportunity to make a breakthrough, one must seize it and not miss it. Once the opportunity was missed, it would be wasted. Yan Zhuixing naturally could not miss such a good opportunity. It should be known that every inch of progress in the demonic book would bring him unimaginable benefits. So at this critical moment, he still decided to make a breakthrough. And Man Hu and the others had nothing to say, they could only do their best to help. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. A series of high-speed flying sounds swept past the top. The few of them immediately held their breaths. After the sounds faded, they saw old Seven, who was staring at the gaps between the leaves above, angrily say, "It's Ouyang Da's people from the Great Liao Nation." They also interfered. This is expected. I have already contacted Master again and informed him of the situation. Master has already set off from the Great Snow Mountain to pick us up. Don't say too much and be careful. Man Hu said calmly. The other three's faces were filled with joy. Master had personally made a move. They suddenly felt a lot more confident. With Master's cultivation, it would take at most half a day to get here. On the first day, everyone only met people from the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce. They did not see any other forces interfering. The few of them thought that Yin Baikong wanted to monopolize the demonic book and purposely controlled the spread of the news. This was a good thing for them, who were escaping. After all, no matter how big the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce was, it was still limited. However, before the second day arrived, they discovered that outstanding heroes were everywhere. There were people flying everywhere to search for them, forcing them to hide in all directions. If Yu Qianqiu knew about this, he would definitely laugh very happily. Back then, he was forced into the misty forest by people like this. Now that he could let Yan Zhuixing have a taste of this, how could he not be happy? The 7 black fiends that were circling around Yan Zhuixing suddenly moved faster. The 4 of them looked over and saw Yan Zhuixing's chest suddenly expand. He took a deep breath and the 7 black fiends entered his nostrils in a blink of an eye. Then, his eyes moved slightly. Just as he opened his eyes, they saw a red glow that seemed to be overflowing. When he opened his eyes, the red glow overflowed and completely covered his eyes. Man Hu and the other 3 stared at his eyes and felt like their souls were captivated. They felt like they couldn't control themselves. Just as the 4 of them were shocked, the red glow quickly disappeared. Yan Zhuixing's eyes had already returned to normal. They were still pitch black. The 4 of them also calmed their minds in an instant. However, they still looked at each other with lingering fear. Man Hu asked softly, "Young palace master, have you already broken through?" "I have already cultivated to the realm of demon eye ecstasy," Yan Zhuixing said with a cold expression. The few of them revealed expressions of joy. They did not find his cold reaction strange at all. This was because every time he cultivated, he would have this reaction. Everyone was already used to it. Unbeknownst to them, when Yan Zhuixing's demon eye was shining with red light, there was an early-stage tribulation passing cultivator hovering in the sky. As he scanned the dense forest, he suddenly discovered a red light flashing through the gaps in the forest. It immediately aroused his vigilance, and he stealthily came over here. Chapter 580. At this time, Yu Qianqiu had already left Lan City with Guan Zhongkai and Yulan. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan had both made great contributions and received praise from their master. They were naturally in a good mood and were even more respectful towards Niu Yud. But what made the 2 more depressed was that this Niu Yud was still half dead on the road. He clearly had such a high level of cultivation, but he refused to speed up. Instead, he continued to fly on a broken flying sword. What was worse was that he kept stopping along the way. It was no different from a sightseeing tour. So Guan Zhongkai said weakly, "Senior Niu, if we keep going like this, I'm afraid we won't be able to reach the World Chamber of Commerce by the time the cornucopia gathering starts." Unexpectedly, Niu Yud raised his eyebrows and said, "What? You think I'm flying too slow? If I fly too fast and you lose me, and I can't find the way to the World Chamber of Commerce, don't blame me for not keeping my word after taking the money." Yulan secretly smiled. He didn't care. He actually wanted Niu Yud to slow down. It was best if he didn't go to the World Chamber of Commerce. No, I was wrong." Guan Zhongkai hurriedly blocked in front of him and smiled apologetically. "Walk slowly, no rush, no rush." If he really lost Niu Yud, the consequences were not something he could bear. If he was slow, then so be it. At least he could push the blame onto Niu Yud when it was late. It had nothing to do with him. Humph. Niu Yud gave him an unhappy look. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't want to fly fast, but his cultivation was only so high. No matter how fast he went, he couldn't go very fast. In the end, because of these few words, "Fine." This Niu Yud simply had Yulan by 3 horses and rode them slowly on the ground. He could walk dozens of li in a day. Yulan was naturally happy to cooperate. Guan Zhongkai was about to cry. He was just short of calling him ancestor. "I told you to slow down, but not this slow method. How long would it take to reach the World Chamber of Commerce? If he was this slow, it would be strange if he was fine. He would definitely be taught a lesson when he returned." So Guan Zhongkai tried to persuade him with kind words, but Niu Yud only said that he was tired of flying and didn't want to fly anymore. In the end, the former begged for a long time before agreeing to his method of using a flying artifact. Sitting on the flying Dharma artifact, Yu Qianqiu was carefree, but he did not stop. Every once in a while, he would force the two of them to inquire about Yan Zhuixing, to see if he had been captured. Fortunately, this was not a difficult matter for Guan Zhongkai. With the World Chamber of Commerce's information network in various countries, it was very easy for him to obtain the latest news. In this large area of space, there was a person observing every 1 kilometer, because Yan Zhuixing and the other 4 had disappeared within this area. He was just one of them. However, coincidentally, Yan Zhuixing and the others who were being apprehended were right below him. He did not know if this was his opportunity to render meritorious service or his misfortune. A sky-shaking sound arrow was quietly held in his hand. If there really was a target down there, he wouldn't need to risk his life. As long as he sent a signal, he would have made a great contribution. After that, a large number of experts would gather here. If he captured Yan Zhuixing, his contribution would be even greater. Silently and gently, he approached the dense forest below. However, the vegetation in this forest was really dense. He had already reached the treetops, but he couldn't see the scene below clearly. He stretched his head left and right, trying to see what was happening below through the gaps between the branches and leaves without alerting his target. However, he was in the light, and the area covered by the towering trees was very dark. This was how people's visual reaction was. It was difficult to see anything in the dark from the light, but it was very clear from the light from the dark. He had clearly seen a red light flash before, and he was definitely not seeing things. However, there was no movement at all now. Without a choice, he tightened his grip on the sky-shaking sound arrow in his hand, ready to send a signal at any time. His body tried to avoid rubbing against the branches and leaves as he slowly descended. Although the movement from touching the branches and leaves was very small, what were the cultivations of Man Hu and the others? They were much taller than him, and in addition, they were constantly on guard, so they immediately sensed the faint movement. The 4 of them looked up at the top of Yan Zhuixing's head at the same time. Yan Zhuixing's cultivation was not as good as the 4 of them, so he did not notice anything at first. However, the 4 of them's actions undoubtedly indicated something. He slowly raised his head and looked up. The light from the branches and leaves was flickering, and he could vaguely see a person diving down. The 7th brother had a fierce expression as he prepared to kill him. Man Hu quickly signaled his 3 juniors to not act blindly without thinking, and transmitted his voice, "Everyone hide well, he has a whistling arrow in his hand. Wait for him to come down before making a move. Don't give him a chance to send a signal." The 4 of them quietly hid behind a big tree, ready to launch a sneak attack. However, they discovered that Yan Zhuixing slowly stood up in the air, and did not have the slightest intention of hiding. Man Hu anxiously transmitted his voice, "Young palace master, don't beat the grass and alert the snake. Don't worry, I just wanted to test the power of the demon I ecstasy." Yan Zhuixing raised his head and looked up, just in time. Just as he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly blossomed with a demonic red light. The cultivator who had dived down had mixed into the shade of the trees, and had gradually adapted to the darkness below. Stealthily pushing aside the last eyesore in front of him, he focused his gaze and looked down. What surprised him was that there seemed to be someone looking at him from below. From the light that leaked out, he could see the glimmer in the other party's eyes. In that instant, the pair of ice-cold eyes suddenly glowed with a demonic and breathtaking red light. It reflected directly into his eyes, and then he couldn't see anything, only his eyes were filled with red. His consciousness instantly fell into a coma, and when he suddenly woke up, he discovered that he was in a boundless sea of blood. Panic, fear, and he wanted to shout loudly, and he wanted to struggle with all his might. However, he discovered that he could not shout, and his limbs were so heavy that he could not even move a finger. At this moment, a light suddenly appeared in the distant sea of blood, and it seemed to be an escape route. "Come over, come over, come over." In the direction of the exit, there were people constantly calling out to him, and then he involuntarily floated over. Manhu and the other three stared nervously in this direction. Once the other party sent out a signal, the consequences would be unimaginable. It was not like before. At that time, it was only the World Commerce Association that was chasing, but now, all the powers had come to join in the fun. Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye activated, and when the red light lit up, the four of them felt their minds ripple. Fortunately, it was not targeted at the four of them, so it did not affect them much. Yan Zhuixing stretched out his hand towards the person hiding behind the tree, and softly called out, "Come over." The voice was like a sleep-talking murmur, like a mother calling her naughty son home for dinner, harmless and warm. As for the person behind the tree, he pushed aside the tree branches, and slowly floated towards Yan Zhuixing with a dazed look in his eyes. He was still holding the sky-shaking sound arrow in his hand, but it did not have any effect. Instead, he stiffly loosened his fingers, and the arrow fell onto the thick layer of leaves. The red light in Yan Zhuixing's eyes had already disappeared, and his eyes had turned into an abnormally terrifying blood-red color. It made one's scalp tingle, and it did not look like a human's eyes. That cultivator quietly floated in front of Yan Zhuixing, and with a silly smile, he stared at that pair of blood-red eyes. Yan Zhuixing stretched out his hand, and gently stroked his face. His movements were very gentle. Just as the smile on that cultivator's face grew wider, the blood red in Yan Zhuixing's eyes faded, and he regained his cold and emotionless look. That cultivator immediately became confused, as if he could not find his way. Manhu and the other three were no longer affected when Yan Zhuixing withdrew the red light in his eyes. But they still stared dumbfoundedly at this abnormally strange scene. Suddenly, Yan Zhuixing's hand that was caressing the other party changed from gentle to sinister 5 claws. With a lingering killing intent, it pierced into the lower half of the other party's face with a crack. From the nose to the entire chin, it was completely wrapped in this claw. Fresh blood flowed out uncontrollably. That cultivator felt the pain, and his eyes instantly regained clarity. Then, they bulged out, filled with disbelief. Struggle, but with half of his face being grabbed, how could he struggle free? The more he struggled, the more pain he felt. He could not even make a sound of pain or cry for help. His nose and mouth were grabbed by the other party, so how could he make a sound? Kacha, half of his face was crushed together, and a bloody hole appeared on the lower half of his face. The breath exhaled from the bloody hole blew out a blood bubble, and with a thpu, it burst. That person almost fainted from the pain, and lost control of his body. Just as he was about to fall, Yan Zhuixing expressionlessly clenched his 5 claws into a fist, and lightly shouted, "Little devil fist." A fist imprinted on the other party's chest. Bang! The sound was not too loud, and it was only a muffled sound. Obviously, the strength was controlled perfectly. However, that cultivator exploded into pieces in an instant, and blood rained down on the ground. Yan Zhuixing, who was floating in the forest, expressionlessly shook off the blood on his hand. The strange thing was that his hand did not seem to be stained with blood. He just shook it, and there was not even a trace of blood on his hand. He glanced at the direction where the 4 of them were hiding, and as if nothing had happened, he said, "State Preceptor, let us continue on our way." The 4 of them walked out silently, and looked at the scattered red on the ground. They were still in a daze. They did not expect the devil eye to be so powerful, to be able to directly control people. It was a little too scary. First it was the devil eye, then the devil claw, and finally the little devil fist, which easily solved the problem. The 4 of them thought back to that scene. If it was used on them, they did not know if they could block it. Just thinking about it made them feel a chill down their spines. OL6 picked up the sky-shaking arrow and put it in his storage bag. Man who laughed bitterly and waved his hand, let's go. Fly close to the ground in the forest. Although the speed is much slower, at least it is safer. I hope I can meet Master soon. After saying that, he identified the direction and flew away. The 4 of them followed closely behind him. The 5 of them fluttered in the forest, avoiding the trees in front of them. Looking at Yan Juixing's flying speed, he was actually not any slower than them, but there was a layer of black light wrapped around his body. This was the flying movement technique from the demonic book, Devil Light Glimpse. Otherwise, with his cultivation, there would be a big gap if he wanted to keep up with the speed of the 4 of them. Chapter 581. That's strange. Where did this Nyoyud come from? Why haven't I heard of him before? In the sacred palace of Baiwan Nation, Wen Lanfeng had an incredulous look on his face as he sat in the palace carved from jade. After the news about Yan Juixing came out, Wen Lanfeng was also shocked. However, he was not interested in robbing others. Instead, he found it unbelievable that Nyoyud could see through Yan Juixing's background. He was the young man that Bing Qingzi brought with him some time ago. At that time, Wen Lanfeng was a little surprised and couldn't help but take a few more glances. He didn't pay much attention to him when he found that he was just a small cultivator in the early stage of passing calamity. However, Nyoyud could see something else. Could it be that his cultivation was higher than his? He was disdainful of Nyoyud's actions in the ghost village. He thought that Nyoyud was at most a liar with a decent cultivation. He didn't expect him to be so capable. Nongzhu sat on the side and peeled the green fragrant seed, speechlessly. It was a kind of hard-shelled nut the size of a fingernail. After opening it, there was white and plump flesh inside, which tasted very fragrant and delicious. This kind of nut could only be found in the sacred land of the Wen family. It couldn't grow anywhere else. Although the nut was hard, with Nongzhu's cultivation, it was easily opened with a light pinch. The white flesh popped into her mouth. He sat on the chair and chewed. Looking at Wen Lanfeng, who was frowning and thinking, he didn't know what to say. He didn't expect it either. He didn't agree to help Yu Qianqiu kill Yan Juixing. In the end, as soon as he left the restaurant, Yu Qianqiu killed Yan Juixing. This kid really did what he said he would do. He didn't hesitate at all. But wasn't the commotion a little too big? They were trying to kill Yan Juixing. What kind of magic art could dominate the cultivation world? Was it so mysterious? Ruthless. He didn't do it himself, but let all the cultivators in the world do it together. Nongzhu. I'm impressed. It said that you are very popular in the cultivation world. I didn't expect you to know this Nyoyud who appeared out of nowhere. You really have a wide circle of friends. Can you tell me who this person is? Wen Lanfeng asked with a smile. Nongzhu knew that she couldn't hide the fact that she met Nyoyud in his territory. She shook her head and said, "Old one. Who cares where he came from? It's not like he's in your way. What are you worrying about? You can't say that. I have a favor to ask from him. I want you to help me build a bridge," Wen Lanfeng said seriously. Nongzhu's expression froze. She asked suspiciously, "Do you have a favor to ask of him?" "Beg him for what?" "Limit-breaking pill." Wen Lanfeng sighed and said, "I shouldn't be so greedy, but I can't always protect the entire Wen family. There will come a day when I have to leave." He had to make some plans for the Wen family. "Can you ask him to sell me some restriction-breaking pills? I'll pay him back." Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What limit-breaking pill? Who knows if it's a poison or a panacea? In short, it's a scam. Why do you have to give him money? She paused and said with a wry smile, "Listen to me. Anyway, as long as it's something made by Nyo Yud, you'd better not touch it. It's not as good as you think." "Is it fake?" Wen Lanfeng was shocked. Nongzhu waved her hand and said, "I don't know whether it's fake or not. Anyway, I advise you to restrain your Wen family. Don't get involved in Nyo Yud's business. There are only benefits. You just need to watch the fun from the sidelines. By the way, just keep it to yourself. Don't let anyone else know about it." The meaning was very clear. Wen Lanfeng would be an idiot if he still didn't understand. He nodded slightly and said, "Thank you. Alas, I'm going back to Shuntian Island. The sound transmission formation left by Nanming is still there. Keep in touch." Nongzhu said and left the temple, disappearing into the horizon. Yan Zhuixing and the others didn't know what the consequences of killing the cultivator would be. In fact, that cultivator was an observation point in this area. He was constantly in contact with people in other directions. It was equivalent to laying a net in this area. When the people in other observation points discovered that the person in this observation point had lost contact, they immediately spread the news. Not long after Man Hu and the others left, 40 to 50 cultivators above tribulation passing stage gathered from all directions. They were all disciples of the world commerce. After looking around, their attention immediately focused on the dense forest below. The person in the lead was Sikong Ju's fifth disciple, Zhang Zuanqing. "Search below." Zhang Zuanqing waved his hand without hesitation. Dozens of people rushed into the forest below and found a dismembered corpse on the spot. A few disciples who were good at tracking quickly searched the area and soon found some clues. One of them reported to Zhang Zuanqing, "Martial uncle, from the scene, there are 5 different people's footprints. The number matches with Yan Zhuixing's. It should be done by Yan Zhuixing and the others." Zhang Zuanqing looked around and saw that the ground was covered in thick leaves. It didn't look like a place to leave footprints. He asked suspiciously, "How can you be sure it's them?" The disciple cupped his hands and said, "It's hard to be sure. But when they killed our disciples, they shouldn't have exploded the corpses and scattered the blood everywhere. That's why they left footprints." Saying that, he raised a leaf with a bloody footprint and continued to explain, "This was obviously left after they killed someone. Moreover, some of these footprints have one thing in common. When they left, they all headed in the same direction." He waved his hand and pointed southwest, "Over there. They went along this mountain range." Zhang Zuanqing nodded slightly. Southwest was where Di Rong Kingdom went. The two matched, so he made a prompt decision: the opponents are hiding in the forest and fleeing. Inform the people in the southwest to set up an ambush in the forest in front. We'll spread out and search southwest. They won't be able to escape. Remember, when you find someone, send the signal first." Under his command, 2 people flew into the sky to report. The other dozens of people formed a search line of nearly 1,000 meters and swept southwest. The movements of the World Commerce Association immediately attracted the attention of the other powers who were confused. Therefore, the direction of this mountain range immediately became the direction where the powers of the various countries gathered. People constantly entered the forest to search and the sky was filled with people, almost forming an inescapable net. Man Hu and the other 4 who were fleeing clearly felt the pressure. They could see people in the sky almost constantly when they raised their heads. Moreover, people would occasionally enter the forest to search from all directions. This made it even harder for them to speed up and they had to constantly hide and run. It was very obvious that the people chasing them had already discovered their precise route. Otherwise, it would not be so obvious in such a large mountain range. They never would have thought that it was because of Yan Zhuixing's little devil fist exploding corpse that caused this disaster. With this torment, the 5 of them immediately felt miserable. From the looks of it, they might not be able to escape. The 5 of them were currently hiding in a concave wall at the bottom of a small hill. The hanging vines had concealed them, but this was only a temporary camouflage and could not last long. Old 7 asked somewhat anxiously, "Eldest senior brother, what do we do?" Man who shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "What else can we do? If we really can't do it, we can only forcefully break out." Young Palace Master, do you have any ideas? The few of them looked at Yan Zhuisheng together, hoping that he would have a good idea. Yan Zhuisheng's face was cold as he suddenly gritted his teeth and said, "Niu Yud, I have no enmity with you. Why do you want to harm me?" The few of them revealed a trace of helplessness when they heard this. His words undoubtedly meant that he had no idea either. But who knew that they would hear him say, "I'll forcefully break out. You guys stay here. Their target is me. They won't do anything to you." The few of them were greatly shocked and said almost in unison, "No." Yan Zhuisheng waved his hand at them and said coldly, "Don't worry. If there aren't any soul formation experts, they might not be able to stop me. If I can escape, I'll naturally go to Snowy Mountain to find you guys." "No." Man who firmly denied, "All the forces are mobilizing on a large scale. It's impossible that there aren't any soul formation experts among them. It's too risky." "I have an idea," Old 6 suddenly said. The few of them looked at him and Old 7 said excitedly, "Sixth senior brother, what idea do you have? Quickly say it." Old 6 glanced at them and silently took out the sky-shaking whistle arrow from his storage bag. He said in a deep voice, "You guys continue to move forward secretly. I'll go in the opposite direction. I'll try my best to hold on for 2 hours and increase the distance between us. When the time comes, I'll release this whistle arrow and it will definitely attract everyone. When the time comes, you guys take the opportunity to quickly leave." The few of them looked at Old 6 in shock. He clearly wanted to sacrifice himself to attract the enemy so that they could escape. Imagine, if thousands of people found out that they were fooled by him, even if it was Yan Zhuisheng, who would let him go? No. Man who covered Old 7's mouth with his hand before he could even shout out. They could only hear the whooshing sound of people passing by above their heads. The few of them gritted their teeth and stared at Old 6. Even Yan Zhuisheng, who was usually calm, was moved when he looked at him. When there was no more movement, Man who extended his hand to Old 6 and said, "Give me the whistle arrow." Old 6 shook his head and hugged the whistle arrow tightly. He chuckled and said, "I'm still hoping that eldest senior brother will avenge me. Leave this matter to me." "Right, eldest senior brother, remember to take revenge for second senior brother. Give it to me. You're the senior brother. This kind of matter should be done by me, the junior brother." Old 7 stretched out his hand to snatch it. "You guys leave quickly." Old 6 pushed Old 7's hand away. As he spoke, he also flashed out and sneaked in the direction he came from. Old 6. Sixth junior brother. Sixth senior brother. The few of them anxiously shouted in a low voice and did not dare to raise their voices. However, even if Old 6 heard them, he did not turn around and disappeared into the dense forest. The 3 of them silently lowered their heads with bloodshot eyes. Yan Zhuisheng tightly shut his mouth and his chest rapidly heaved up and down. Man who suddenly waved his hand and said, "Go, don't waste Old 6's painstaking efforts." Out of the original 5 people, only 4 were left. The 4 figures quickly dashed into the forest. Chapter 582. High up in the sky, a white shadow flew out of the D-Rome Kingdom's territory at an incredible speed and entered the Purple Thistle Kingdom's airspace. This person was none other than Bing Qingzi. Following closely behind it was a white line that flung its tail in flight. It was the Great Snow Mountain's guardian spirit beast, Snow Flood Dragon. At this moment, Bing Qingzi was burning with anxiety. After receiving the urgent situation report from his disciple, Man Hu, he did not stop and immediately set off from the Great Snow Mountain. Even the snow flood dragon that had not left the Great Snow Mountain for thousands of years was brought down the mountain by him. He knew what the current situation was like. Even Yin Baikong and Hu Changshu, who were on his side, would fall out with him. His Great Snow Mountain lineage was not strong. Apart from him, only a few of his disciples had a higher cultivation. Furthermore, the guardian spirit beast, Snow Flood Dragon, was comparable to a mid-divine transformation realm cultivator. Now that things had come to this, he could only save Yan Juexing at all costs. If he did not try his best to save Yan Juexing, the curse on his body would not spare him. Even if he could abandon himself, he couldn't abandon his disciples. They were as close as father and son. Originally, the Snow Flood Dragon's cultivation could not keep up with Bing Qingzi's flying speed. However, the Snow Flood Dragon was born with the ability to ride the wind and break the waves. It already had the basic attributes of a dragon. It was born with speed. Although the Snow Flood Dragon could not speak, it had already gained intelligence and could feel its master's anxiety. Otherwise, he would not have brought it down the mountain and flown so frantically. On the other side of the Purple Thistle Kingdom, there was a mountain range. However, on this desolate mountain range, there were currently hundreds of people standing. Each of them stopped on the treetops, waiting for something. These people were all divine transformation realm lords of various kingdoms. They were not waiting for others, but for Bing Qingzi, who might pass by. There was a large-scale search going on ahead. Some people would definitely not allow Bing Qingzi to go over and interrupt them. For example, Yin Baikong, who had a calm expression. Yin Baikong squinted his eyes and glanced at Shengwan Taiping, who was on the treetops in the distance, with a somewhat resentful expression. Needless to say, who else but Shengwan Taiping could have spread the news to the whole world? This was equivalent to ruining his plans. Actually, he had wanted to leave first and kill Shengwan Taiping in the Purple Thistle Kingdom to prevent the news from leaking out. Who would have thought that Shengwan Taiping would be so cunning as to spread the news in advance? Soon after, it was rumored that the lords of the various kingdoms were moving out. Yin Baikong naturally couldn't sit still. He was very confident in his forces, but no matter how strong they were, they wouldn't be able to defend against so many soul formation stage cultivators. He was forced to personally come out to hold the line for the World Commerce Association. From time to time, a group of experts from the cultivation world looked around. He was afraid that those two people would appear. One was Bai Changchun of the Demon Domain and the other was Wen Lanfeng of the Bai Wan Nation. If these two people were to come, some people's dreams would be shattered. In fact, there were many people who were eager for the two top experts of the cultivation world to appear because it was unlikely for them to get Yan Juexing. It would be better to let Yan Juexing fall into the hands of Bai Changchun and Wen Lanfeng so that everyone would be at ease. However, the two of them had yet to appear. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. This was an expert who truly had confidence in his own strength. They weren't interested in dominating the cultivation world at all and only believed in themselves. Now that things had come to this, many people had already secretly passed down orders to kill Yan Juexing on the spot if they found him. It would be best if their bones were ground to ashes, but their corpses couldn't fall into the hands of others. In any case, even if they got their hands on it, they would probably be attacked by others. Since they couldn't enjoy it, they might as well destroy it and maintain the status quo. Sikong Ju looked at his master's gloomy face and knew that he was in the wrong. When he received the news, he should have immediately asked Guan Zhongkai to kill Yulan at all costs. There wouldn't have been such trouble then. Now, even if the World Commerce Association got their hands on it, they would probably have to pay a huge price. A figure flew over from afar. After Mu Lianqiu bowed to Yin Baikong and his master, he transmitted his voice. Grandmaster, Master, our people have found traces of Yan Zhuixing and the others. However, there are too many forces following us. I'm afraid that even if we find Yan Zhuixing, it will be a little troublesome." Yin Baikong transmitted his voice expressionlessly. "Those who are scattered, gather your strength. Lianqiu, go and pass down my decree. Inform all the branches to gather all the cultivators above tribulation passing stage to reinforce them. Sikong, go and hold the scene. Don't show mercy to anyone who dares to snatch it. Kill without mercy. I'll take care of everything." Yin Baikong was ruthless this time. How could he let others snatch the meat that was already in his hands? The two received the order and Mu Lianqiu rushed down the mountain to inform all the branches. Sikong Ju quickly flew in the direction of the search. The moment Sikong Ju moved, it became lively. There were many people watching this place. Almost 100 spirit-severing experts flew up and chased after Sikong Ju. This made Yin Baikong's teeth itch, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't have the ability to tell everyone not to move. Even if he spoke, they wouldn't listen to him. He wasn't by Changchun. Stone Jade City, the capital of Axi country. A banquet was already prepared in the guest hall of the World Commerce Association's Stone Jade City branch. Niu Yud, who was sitting at the head of the table, was eating and drinking to his heart's content. Yulan Do was in a good mood and happily poured wine for Niu Yud. She didn't need to worry and just followed Niu Yud closely. Anyway, Guan Zhongkai would report the latest news later. It was really good to be able to keep up with the latest news of the cultivation world while having fun. As the two were eating and drinking, they suddenly heard the sound of dozens of people flying in the sky. They seemed to be in a hurry and from the sound, their cultivations weren't bad. The two looked at each other in shock and didn't know what happened. At this moment, Guan Zhongkai walked in quickly and said excitedly, "Senior Niu, I found it. I found Yan Zhuixing's tracks." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He put down the pig trotter in his hand and asked hurriedly, "Did you catch him or kill him?" Guan Zhongkai sat down and shook his head. "Not yet, but it should be soon. Since we found his tracks, it shouldn't be long before we catch him." "That's true." Yu Qianqiu chuckled and continued to eat the pig trotter. He thought that with so many people making a move, it would be difficult to catch him alive. He was afraid that many people would rather kill Yan Zhuixing than let him fall into the hands of others. Yulan Do asked casually, "Brother Guan, what happened outside just now?" "It seems that many cultivators above the tribulation passing stage left." "Did something happen?" How could Guan Zhongkai reveal this matter? This was a decree from his grandmaster to gather people. He shook his head nonchalantly and said, "It's nothing. Some blind people came to this branch and the manager went to gather people to support them. It's not a big deal." Yulan Do said, "Oh." She was more or less confused. The three continued to eat the dishes on the table. In the dense forest, Zhang Xuanqing originally led dozens of people to search, but later, many people came to help. At this moment, there were hundreds of people advancing in the forest. Even the sky above the forest was followed by a group of people. There were 6 people at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. Old Six hid in a call not far away and quietly observed the movement in front of him. He originally planned to find a way to get further away and then release the whistling arrow. However, with such a dense group of people searching in front of him, there was no way to get past them. Counting the time, only an hour had passed. There was still nearly half of the time until the 2-hour deadline. Needless to say, looking at the situation here, eldest senior brother and the others weren't any better. With a bitter smile, Old Six took out the whistling arrow and retreated into the kernel, gritting his teeth. He raised the whistling arrow, found an opening above, and directly pulled it. Chirp. An ear-piercing sound rang out. A dazzling blue light rapidly rose from the forest into the sky. With a loud bang, a cloud of blue smoke exploded. It was like a blue mushroom cloud with a long trail below it, indicating where it came from. If it was at night, this mushroom cloud would emit a blue light to guide the way. The entire region was thrown into chaos. Everyone's eyes looked at the blue mushroom cloud. Someone took the lead and shouted, "The World Commerce Association has found the target. Charge over. Speed up, hurry. We can't let Yan Zhuixing fall into someone else's hands. Charge. Quickly go and support him." Shouts rang out everywhere. Everyone went crazy. There was no other way. Everyone had received a death order. In an instant, countless people swarmed in from all directions. The people who were searching in the forest in the distance all came out to check the direction and flocked in the direction of the blue mushroom cloud. Zhang Zuinxing and the others who were searching were all stunned when they saw a blue light rising not far away. Someone said in shock, "Someone found Yan Zhuixing in front." This was the sky-shaking whistling arrow that only sounded when the target was found. Then, everyone saw a figure quickly flash to the left. Zhang Zuinxing shouted, "Catch him." Hundreds of people immediately chased after him. Looking down from the sky, the movements of these hundreds of people stirred up the forest. Bang was followed by a few screams. A few large trees fell down. It was already open. Some people who were watching from the sidelines, worried that it was a diversion, could no longer hold it in. The other side had clearly found the target. Both sides had already started fighting, so there was nothing to hesitate about. Therefore, they rushed over as fast as they could without any regard for their lives. The chaotic crowd rushed into the forest one after another. Just as the whistling arrow sounded out, Man Hu and the other three who were fleeing came to a stop with a jolt. Old Seven turned to look behind him and said with tears streaming down his face, "Sixth senior brother, didn't we agree on 2 hours? We haven't arrived yet. Hide." Man Hu, who also had tears streaming down his face, pulled him. The four quickly hid in a small cave. It was a very shallow and narrow cave. The four of them were tightly squeezed together. 3 out of the 4 people were crying silently. Yan Zhuixing's lips were tightly shut, and his face was stretched taut. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.